Hello, welcome to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, where it is all about helping amazing physicians just like you create a wealthy life free from burnout and with the financial security to practice medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Elisa Chiang. Hello, and welcome back to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast. Today, I have a great guest, Dr. Michele Cho-Dorado. She is a pediatric gastroenterologist, medical director, as well as the author of a children's book. She's also the speaker and founder of Bright Futures EDG. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
So, what inspired you to write a children's book about money?
Well, it started with my realization of my own lack of financial literacy. I'm sure many of your listeners can relate to going through all of medical school and residency and training without having really learned much about money at all. And at that time, we weren't really making much anyway, so I didn't feel like, I had much to manage, I guess. And I was almost a decade into practice when I started realizing just my true lack of financial education. And I had young kids at the time, and I went on an educational journey just learning about personal finance and different modes of investing and tax strategies and things like that. And I just realized that my husband and I together, we wanted our kids not to go through all of childhood and even most of adulthood without understanding money. And it's just such a vital skill that's not really taught in school. And so when I say my kids were young, they were 1 and 3. So, not really of an age where you can even discuss these things with them. And that was just my way of introducing these concepts to them in a fun way that I could interact with them. So I decided to publish a children's picture book, and you know, that was a process in itself, but yeah, it was just my way of realizing that if I can read stories to them and expose them to these financial literacy concepts in a way that they might be able to understand or at least hear, then I thought that was my way of introducing these concepts.
What motivated you to first start learning yourself?
Yeah, so I think I told you that, I just went through almost a decade of practice without understanding, what it was to invest. I didn't really understand the stock market. I didn't know that there were these different vehicles to put money in, like, Roth IRA. And yes, I had a 401k with my work, but I didn't really understand how to invest in it. And so I think actually the first book that I read was The White Coat Investor. And you know that feeling when the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. That was the feeling I had. I was like learning these new words that I had no idea what they meant, and it was just a new way of thinking about money. And my husband actually probably was one of the first to start planting some seeds about investing and early retirement and things like that. Nothing that was ever on my radar. And so I think it started there. And then I started getting involved in some online physician groups that were discussing finance. And so from there, I guess, learn from other people's questions and other people's answers. And from there, then the next step I took was to learn about real estate. And so that just really opened up my eyes to a whole different world of, different ways of making passive income and again, just open up my mind.
And then where did the inspiration of actually writing a book come from?
So, as part of this educational journey, I was also doing a lot of personal growth and mindset work as well, just reading a lot of books on that and being around people that were in that world. And I think it just made me realize that I can set goals outside of just being a physician. And I I think that medicine is such a narrow path, and you're always told what to do next and stay within the lines and follow the rules. And your path's kind of laid out for you. It's very straight and narrow, in my opinion. And I was never really taught to think outside the box. And during this period of just learning and education and asking questions, I became more curious. And I think I also started to see that I can do more things than just practice medicine. And so that's where that idea first came was, you know what? I want my kids to learn this stuff. I don't see it really taught, or I don't see many other resources or books on this topic. And so I'm going to create it. And that's kind of how that started.
And what was the publishing process like?
So I'll be honest, I knew nothing about writing a book. And the old me, even a year prior to that idea, would have just would have just given up because I would have thought that it was too hard. I didn't know what to do and it wasn't worth, I would have thought I couldn't learn it. But I ended up just finding resources and just determined to make it work. I'll tell you that the process was very long for me the first time because, again, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. And so I sought out a publisher, I sought out an illustrator, I wrote a manuscript, I got it edited. I just learned kind of as I went what I was supposed to do. And each next step, when it got to the next step, I just figured out what I needed to do next. From beginning to end, from when I wrote the manuscript to when I had my book in hand, it was about 2 years.
And so it was really just when you first had the idea, starting to ask around, find some resources. Did anyone know who to even start with? Or,
Yeah, so I did a lot of research online. And then one of the first things that was very uncomfortable for me that I did was I went to an author conference. And I went to an author conference where I knew not a single person, and I didn't even consider myself an author. So I was, feeling a bit of imposter syndrome and just really shy about going, but it's just something that I felt I needed to do to put myself out there, get out of my comfort zone. And going there was probably one of the best decisions I ever made because I met two other people there, two friends that this is now, what is it, 2025? That was th almost 3 years ago, 3 years ago. I met these friends there that I still can communicate with on a weekly basis. We just really bonded, and just to have the support of other authors that are in your shoes, all trying to figure it out. There's something about being around like-minded people, whatever it is that you're pursuing, that really gives you motivation and the push to keep moving forward. So those are kinds of the things that I did, I would say, when I got started.
and how many books have you published at this point?
So I have a third coming out soon, and I have four and five in the works. So far I have a series of five.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you.
And why don't you just share the title of your first two books that are already out?
Yeah, so the first book was Reach for the Stars, and that was, the first book that was for my kids. It just introduces all the different concepts of financial literacy and kind of walks this character through a business journey where she has an idea and then she kind of makes it come into fruition and then she teaches along the way. And then after that, and you know what? Actually, to be honest, I thought that it was just going to be one book and that was it. But then as I got into the journey, as the book came out, I just realized that my passion for this was really growing. And I just felt like it really went beyond just teaching my kids. I felt that other kids need to learn this, and other parents needed also some guidance in terms of teaching their kids. And what I've really seen is that I think teaching money lessons goes beyond money. I really believe that it teaches a lot of vital life skills like teaching confidence and leadership and entrepreneurship and all these things that help make a child confident and successful in life in general. And so I think those are really closely tied together. So, yeah, that was my first book, Reach for the Stars.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah.
Yay. Thank you. Yeah, and so then the second book was called Mimi's Magical Money Earning Adventure, and it teaches a little bit more of a focus on different ways to earn money. And, one thing also that I really try to reinforce is that, money is a tool, it's not a goal. And I want kids to really understand that money is not something that just, it definitely does not buy you happiness. It's not something that just allows you to mass material things, but money is something that is a tool that can allow you to make an impact. And so it's a way to create value, and finding different ways to create value is an important concept of earning money. And so that's something that I wanted to highlight in the book there. Yeah, and then the third book that's going to be coming out soon is called Mimi's Dolphin Challenge, Saving for a Swim. So that's a little bit more of a focus on saving. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So how do you approach talking to your kids about money?
So with my kids, they're now 5 and 7. And I would say, so a couple of things. I would say one, we started early. Like I said, they were 1 and 3 when I even had this idea of writing a book. So I've been reading them the stories, and my husband and I just are very open about talking about money. And that's the second thing. So number one, I would say start early. Number two is to be transparent. So we talk freely about money. And that's something that I lacked growing up. My parents were very well intentioned. They came, from another country, moved to the US, and they were immigrants and just working really hard. And I think in their mind, they didn't want us to worry about money because they wanted to, work hard to make a better life for their kids, to give us good educations. And so it was all very well-meaning, but in the end, what happened was they really didn't teach us about money at all because it wasn't talked about. And I think it was something that they shielded us from because they didn't want us to, they didn't want it to be a source of worry or stress. And so at home with our kids, my husband and I are just very open about everything that we do, the way we spend and what we're saving for and what our goals are. And so they hear all these things. Any investments that we make, we have some rental properties, they come with us, we involve them. And so those are things that I think they're much more comfortable talking about money just because we do that at home. And so that's another thing I would say. And then another thing is make it fun. I think there's fun ways to teach money, reading books, playing games. My kids like to play Monopoly Junior, and so that's something that's fun for us. Yeah.
Yeah, we share that background. My parents also immigrated to the United States and then brought us up. And one of the things they do appreciate is that my parents did talk about money. They talked mostly about saving money and having to earn money. And so we did kind of get that information, but there wasn't much talk about investing.
Yeah.
And that I think was the missing piece when, at least from my childhood. And it is amazing. Like a lot of our thoughts about money really start developing from a young age. So I definitely think there was a little bit of a scarcity mindset that was set in from my upbringing because it's like, oh, you really have to save and like have money and make sure like money brought security
Yeah.
and don't waste it at all. Don't use it on frivolous things. So, I mean, obviously some of these are good values, but depending on how it's presented, it can be a place of abundance or a place of scarcity. And so for all of us, I think thinking about how our parents talked about money and how that influences how we think about money now is so important because it can actually open up a like, oh, like that's why I spend like that. For some people, so I think my sister kind of did the opposite because my parents save nothing. My sister like likes to spend quite a bit and she's still good about saving and investing and having learned some of those lessons later on. But it's just the interesting way. Like my brother went so my sister and brother basically went the two opposite ways. My brother went completely frugal, don't spend anything. And my sister went the no, like work, make a lot of money so I can have nice things.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I would say that for my parents, they worked very hard. And so I saw them working hard to earn money. And they always provided everything for us. And again, they didn't really like talk about money struggles. But I saw them working hard. So I knew that you had to work hard for money. And at least that's the story that I grew up with is to earn money, it's hard work. And then it was always like you need to work hard to get a good job so that you can make lots of money so then you can have a nice lifestyle, and that's just kind of the upbringing that I was grown up around. And I think that's what was enforced. And so yeah, it's so true that, how you are raised and the way your parents demonstrate to you what their views are on money is what you adopt growing up. So yeah, that's very true.
And there's even like indirect ways. So, when I was young, if we asked my mom for money, she'd be like, "Go ask your dad." So that gives the implicit messaging that like the man has money, right? And the man's
Yeah.
controlling the money in the household. And that's certainly not the true in my household. I definitely am the one that manages all the money, and my husband has wants nothing really to do with most of it. It's funny. We always used to joke like he'd be like, money, what's that?"
You give them allowance.
Actually, at some point, like that's kind of what we did. It was like, okay, you have $100 a month to like spend on whatever you want, and
That's funny.
and I took care of the rest.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of different dynamics in different homes, so it's interesting.
So, what do you think is a good age to start talking to your kids about money?
I honestly think it's never too early. I know there's some parents who, have teenagers or young adults and maybe think that the boat has passed or they're worried about being late. So I'll also say that's never too late to start. But with that said, it's never too early. Like I said, my kids were 1 and 3 when I first wrote the book. And, if you read to your child at nighttime a bedtime story, then, even as an infant, you can read them these money bedtime stories. And I really believe that just exposing them to the words, even if they're not able to speak or, they may not be able to comprehend or understand. I would say that the earlier you start exposing them to these words and the more frequently that they hear it, then they're more likely to grasp the concepts earlier. And I'll share a story actually. So, my daughter, when she was 4, they have these money management boxes and it's 4 compartments: save, spend, give, and invest. And she was putting a coin into the invest compartment. And I asked her, what does it mean to invest? And I didn't expect her to really understand. I was just curious what she was going to say. And she looked at me and she said, grow. And I was so surprised. But, and I don't think that she really understands, even maybe now, the concept of investing. But the fact that she was able to tie the word grow to invest, it just made me realize that kids really are sponges and they soak in and hear what's going on around them, even if they don't understand it. And so, I think I really believe that as she gets older, she'll be quicker to grasp the concept of what it means to make money grow and understand that that means investing. But for someone who's never heard the word at all, like myself, like I didn't know what it meant to invest until I was like 40, And so I just think it's never too early to start talking about this stuff.
Do you think there are certain times where, or certain ages where bringing in different concepts or bringing in like things like allowance, what guidelines do you have when you think about those things?
Yeah, certainly. So just exposing them to the words, you can start very early, even under the age of 4 or 5, like I was just sharing with my own kids. But, at that time, they won't really grasp the concepts yet. So I think, as they get older, and everybody knows the own developmental, stage of their own child, but, maybe like after 5, then you can start introducing more concepts, I guess reinforcing the concepts of saving, giving, even basic budgeting. Every time they get money, have them bucket money away and start building those habits. And so that they know that there's different buckets that money can go into, it's saving, giving, things like that. And then as they get older, allowing them to even manage their and budget their own money, give them opportunities to earn. And so you mentioned allowance. An allowance is a touchy subject because I feel like everyone has such different opinions about giving allowance and how it should be used. Some families don't believe that allowances should be tied to chores because, as part of the family, you should have the expectation of doing it because you're part of the family, not for money. But some people use an allowance, and I think every family is different. You just find what works for you, and every child is also motivated differently as well. And so I think it just depends on each individual family and each individual child. But if you're going to do allowance, there's different ways that you can give allowance. You can give money for chores or some for achievements or maybe some entrepreneurial ventures or whatever it may be. Again, it has to be what's right for your family. But yeah, I mean, I think once a child starts showing some interest in money, that they have some basic math skills, that they're showing that they're able to handle responsibilities, that they can track responsibilities and focus, I think it's not a bad idea to start introducing some of these things where you give them expectations or give them ways to earn. It doesn't even have to be chores. It can be, if they do something that goes above and beyond, something extra like mowing the lawn or, walking a neighbor's dog or something like that.
Yeah, that's great advice. I realize, yeah, allowance is can be a touchy subject depending on what people's
Yeah.
beliefs are. You talked about how growing up, it was like you work hard for money, or you kind of sense that from your parents. And I certainly got that sense
Mhm.
as well when I was a child. How do you balance kind of wanting to like have kids respect money and realize that, money quote doesn't grow on trees, but also have an abundant mentality toward money that it can be easy to actually acquire money. It doesn't have to be hard per se.
Yeah. So I definitely try to teach my kids having an abundance mindset because I think that there's enough to go around. And so, somebody else having more doesn't mean that they can't have more as well. I don't want them to feel limited in that way, but at the same time, I do think it's important that you instill a work ethic. Nothing's guaranteed to them. Nobody owes them anything, right? And so they still have to have expectations. They need to, we try to make sure that they get some healthy struggles. Things aren't just easy and handed to them all the time, and that includes with money. I think that there's a difference and there's a delicate balance between teaching that you do have to put an effort to earn and you still have to work hard, but at the same time, And that's where maybe the idea of value creation comes to play. If you can create enough value, then you can earn as much value as you're creating, right? And it's endless, the possibilities. And so I want them to be able to see opportunities in that way without feeling entitled to receiving or entitled to things that they think are owed to them. And so I think that, I don't know if that answers your question, but I kind of see that as a balance.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to look at it, and especially kind of looking at trading time for money versus trading value for money.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And so you're hosting the second annual Prosperous Kids Summit, which is happening in March. Why don't you tell us more about your summit?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm hosting the Prosperous Kids, as you mentioned, the Prosperous Kids Virtual Summit. It'll go live on March 31st for that week, ending April 4th. And I will be having multiple different expert speakers as yourself as well. So I appreciate you coming on. But yes, the conference is really targeted to help parents set their kids up for success, not just financially, but also personally in life. And so, as I mentioned, we'll be having some money coaches on as like yourself. We'll have some CPAs, some financial advisors. We're having executive coaches talking about leadership. The CPAs will be talking about tax strategies for parents. We have new this year a college guidance counselor coming on. So for teenagers who are getting ready, preparing for college, and just some things to think about that way. And some new things I'm excited to bring on are we're having somebody come on talking about leveraging points and miles for the family and some travel hacks, as well as leveraging AI in this tech-driven world with kids. And I think that's something that parents sometimes feel really lost in just the digital age with this generation of our children. And so I think that will be helpful. But yeah, I'm really excited to have these speaker sessions and discussions, and I think it'll bring a lot of value to everybody that registers.
Yeah, so how does someone register or sign up or learn more?
They can go to prosperouskidsummit.com. And the link will also be on my website. So my website is www.brightfuturesedg.com, and I'll have a link on there as well. It's free to register. And so, yeah, I hope people will join and get a lot of value from it. I'm really excited. We got a lot of great feedback last year.
Yes, and I'll have those links in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Now, does the conference have any interactive components to it?
They're all recorded videos. There's no Q&A or anything like that. So no, we will actually at the end of after the conference is over, one of the financial advisors and I are joining together and we'll be holding a workshop. And so I would say that that's something that's as a follow-up to the summit that will be interactive and that will be free as well. Excited to offer that.
That's great. So how many speakers do you have coming for the summit?
So we have 13 speakers in total. And like I said, CPAs, money coaches, travel experts, and college guidance counselor, high school finance teacher. And in terms of the AI, we have a chief strategy officer at the Institute of AI at a university coming to speak with us. So I'm excited.
Oh, that's really exciting. I feel like I hear about AI all the time now, and I certainly use ChatGPT quite a bit. But kids really soak up a technology like so fast.
That's so true. And I think for like people our age, even it's fairly new for us. And so we're still getting accustomed to how to best utilize AI. And so then we have our kids who are way more tech savvy than we are. And I feel like, we also need to get ahead of it so that we can help them and help them to benefit from it, and complement their skills. And so there's so many great ways to use AI even in teaching our kids and helping them to get ahead. So, yeah, I'm excited to share some strategies there.
And I also think it's about having kids. I mean, it's great to have all the technology, but having them to also still use their brain thinking and not just relying on the AI to do the thinking for them, because the
Yeah,
AI is only as good as the input you give it.
that is true. And there's a balance there too. So yeah, point well taken.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to share about the conference?
I mean, I don't think so. I think that everyone will get a lot of value from it. Like I said, it'll be speaker sessions that I think question and answer style, much like this. And I hope that, if it will bring lots of interesting discussions, and I hope to do more of these. If people have input or feedback on things that they would like to hear in the future, I'm always open to more input. But yeah, I'm really excited.
I'm excited to be a part of the conference.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your insights on, strategies to grow wealth, empower the next generation. So I thank you again.
Well, thank you so much for coming and being a guest on the podcast today. And I'll be back next week with another episode of the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast.
Thank you. This was fun.
If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and colleagues. And now for the disclaimer. I am not a certified financial planner, accountant, or attorney, and nothing I say should be construed as professional investment, tax, or legal advice. This show is primarily for your education and entertainment. I am a physician, but I'm probably not your physician. So if you need any medical advice, please contact your own physician. Thank you.